to the April 1st, non-April Fool's Day, real thing of our Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The first item we have on our agenda, well, Hunter, would you like to introduce Paul Fontenot first?
As most of you know, we do have a new member, replaces the vacancy that Art left. And Paul comes with us. We've worked a little bit together through the years. He's served on the tree committee for how many years? At least 50
something.
Yes. So has volunteered a lot of his time to the city in the past, and I think brings a lot of expertise from that side and a part of our team here that can really help add some value to those components as we're talking about green space and such an important thing to the city of Fairhope through the years. So would like to welcome Paul and really thank him for his time. This is sometimes a burden. His pay is cheap. So I really do appreciate you agreeing to serve and look forward to our conversations. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, first item on our agenda is the approval of the March 4th minutes. Are there any changes to be made? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We've got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, moving into old/new business. Hunter?
Mr. Chairman, did want to ask you to add an item. I believe we discussed briefly. It's just an extension for Polo Crossing.
That's the Polo Crossing ST 2318 that you have here.
Yes, sir.
Is this the first time that they've had an extension?
It is. It's just a recording. That all the work is done, physical. This is where Chicken Salad Chick is, if
Yeah.
you recall. All the work's done, just a recording, getting it recorded is the process. We're recording the MOPs, or we're working with revenue to figure that out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, traditionally, we carte blanche approve the first extension. So based on that precedent, would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion, we grant an extension for SD 2318 Polo Crossing. Is there a time specific that we need?
The same
6 months.
6 months.
6
is what it's
months.
requesting.
So I'll make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right. Next item, lunch and learn discussion.
Yes, I believe you all saw an email from Cindy. I'll only make one amendment to this. Our goal here is at least once a month, we provide in our office lunch and have 2 or 3 of you there. We can't have quorums, but to discuss, as we're moving closer to the adoption of a new comprehensive plan and into the zoning amendments, we think it would be beneficial to have these meetings somewhat regularly. The only amendment I'll make, it's kind of hard to schedule everything, so we're going to pick 2 or 3 of you every date and just say, here's the schedule to be there, but you all have the flexibility. If you can't make one, just let somebody know, and if y'all want to trade dates, anything like that. But that's what we are setting these up for, so those will be in our office on Pecan, and we'll provide lunch for you, at least feed you while we talk about all the amendments coming. So, but that's it.
Sounds good. Zoning amendments
Yes,
discussion, are you ready for that?
I am.
And are you going to combine that with the medical terminology, or will that be?
It is, really, as we got into some of the terminology on medical, there's 2 components to the medical uses and zoning amendments and overlay. I believe you all recall the meeting we had with, special called meeting with the Board of Adjustment City Council regarding Thomas Hospital. So there'll be some short-term amendments coming with the medical overlay district. But I believe it was Rebecca that brought up, would really like to relook at that overall, especially on the south end of that. Well, that really aligned with something we're looking at in the comprehensive plan. It's what I want to talk about tonight. Just to kind of focus on an area, this is centered roughly around Nichols and Greeno Road. That is this intersection here. And can you all have your screens? Okay. So just kind of going through everything that's happening in that area. The blue line, as you see, that is our current medical overlay district that extends all the way to south to Greeno Lane. You've got kind of the corridor development. So along Greeno Road, the B2, more commercial corridor strip. You've got what you're seeing here is light industrial. Our industrial board is very concerned about losing all industrial in the city, and this is where it currently sits, with a little bit down by the airport. Now, some of the things that have happened in the last 10 years, you do have some unique uses that are restaurant, Hope Farm Brewery, Warehouse Bakery are going in to those warehouse or industrial buildings. And then if you see the red a little bit to the west, that's historic, kind of a neighborhood business district. Zoning is what it is. It's not an overlay district. But a lot of that hasn't been used. We saw last month the proper, which we're still in the middle of a title search on there. That's one of the first projects I think we've seen in quite some time. And then you also have other eclectic zoning districts, including some on the south end and the far east of this area it's zoned by Baldwin County. Within the comp plan, you can see there's a lot happening here and a lot of overlapping goals, and how we kind of coalesce all this into one vision. In all of the comprehensive plan, this is probably the thing we're stuck on right now the most, how to coalesce all this into one vision, how this area grows and complements and not competes with downtown. So it's very close in proximity to downtown as we're looking at the overall area. So what I'm really asking for here is this is going to take 2 or 3 hours of sitting down, and we need somebody to bounce some ideas off of. So what I would ask for is 2 or 3 passionate commissioners that would like to sit down and talk about this with us. We don't have to have that conversation tonight, but if you want to email us or give us a call tomorrow, we're going to get in the weeds on some things, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So if you're willing to do that or interested in doing that, certainly we would love to have you. We'll host whatever time and date's convenient. But that's really all we had at this point, and I believe we can move on to the rest of the agenda.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Hunter. If you're interested in doing that or willing to do that, please email Hunter or give him a call. Last item on our agenda is IR 2401. This is an informal review. This is a time that this is for there's a PUD approved on this property, and they're looking at making changes to where would y'all consider this to be a change of the PUD or a new PUD?
At this point, I think it would be just considered a new PUD.
Okay, so probably a new PUD. So before they go in and do a lot of work, they kind of like to know what our thoughts are just in principle and our theory. This is obviously nothing binding, because until the design and the staff report, the official design and staff reports come in with the different numbers, it's, hard to know how it fits in the comprehensive plan as well as the subdivision regs, but this is where they just try to kind of find out in principle and theory, what are your thoughts on the project? So, Larry?
Thank you. You
got
took
the
away
mic.
most of my thunder, but I appreciate you bringing that together.
Want me to present it for you?
Yeah, I know. I'll sit back down. First off, welcome, Paul. We've worked together on several projects before, and hope to continue working with you up here on the Planning Commission. And as Lee was saying, that this is the existing clump PUD. It's a previously approved PUD that's still in effect on the property. I might be a little off on the numbers, but it was somewhere around 230 multifamily units and about 13 commercial out parcels. Since that time, the property is sold, and a new vision has kind of come up for the property, and 68 Ventures is teamed up with Niket, who I'm about to introduce y'all to architecture and design and our firm to help with some of the local requirements in the civil engineering design. But as y'all are familiar, this is the current master plan, comprehensive plan for Fairhope. And, this node where we are has the ability to have a village-type development. And so to be able to do that, 68 has brought in Niket Architecture, and I'll go ahead and bring them up because the rest of the presentation is really for them. And we have Louis Niket and Jared Calhoun, and the presentation's here, so just as y'all want to start talking, just hit the down button.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your time. My name is Jared Calhoun, and we wanted just to walk through some of the project parameters, some of the early conversations we've had with Hunter about this project and where it sits and the opportunities that it presents. Goals here really just to try and be a part of the culture that already exists here in Fairhope. We're hoping that this new village node can present something new and unique while enhancing kind of the existing fabric of this community. And ultimately, this is meant to be mixed use, walkable community neighborhood. And so we're going to show you kind of lots of different product offerings that are all play a part in that, but it's to make this a walkable village center. And you'll see the commercial plays a part in that, and the residential plays a part in that, and all of those things will be necessary parts to making this node or this new village successful. A brief overview on the master plan. I imagine everybody's had a chance to see this. North here is page left, and you'll see Fairhope Avenue page right on the southern border of the property. And that is kind of the biggest commercial, commercial end of it is along Fairhope Avenue from Highway 181 to the western border. And you'll see in the blue the commercial uses dotting kind of the perimeter. And then as you enter into the site, you'll see more mixed use. There's a hotel that fronts out onto the green. We've got some food and beverage that sit kind of in the center of this activity with what we're calling a beer garden station kind of to the south of that. And as you continue into the property, a big kind of event lawn with a band shell and some community amenities that all kind of line that main street. And this is really the heart of where everything happens here, and that's the big community space that we're focusing most of the energy on. So we have a lot of residential in both the Main Street mixed-use buildings, some short-term stay residents in the hotel concept, and then as you go farther north in kind of the orange color, all of these would be the multifamily rentals. And all of those different user groups are kind of helping to activate this at different times of day with different living patterns, different comings and goings, all to keep activity on the street and to keep this neighborhood center busy with people throughout the day. This is a little faded out on the slide, but this is the active adult piece of the multifamily that kind of fronts in between these ponds out to Highway 181. Also an important player just for the different kind of use and time of day. So all of these different user groups have different patterns of coming and going, and that helps to create kind of what we call an 18-hour day on the street. So you get the most people you can walking up and down throughout the village and the commercial core for the longest period of the day. And from early conversations with Hunter, we were drawing some diagrams here on how this fits into the existing village overlay districts or village districts for Fairhope. So the red here is the community village center, which is I think the little more dense of the commercial villages. And that's largely a factor of the square footage that's on the site. And you'll see that captures the hard corners on Gayfer and 181, all the way down the 181 frontage and all the way down the Fairhope Avenue frontage, except for our little green trail, which we'll touch on in a minute, that is the western border of the project. I think the importance of this diagram is just to give you an idea of size and scale and how it fits in with the existing limits of those village districts. So we've got about 40 acres. It's right at 40 acres in the community village center parcel, about 235 gross square feet of commercial or non-residential use. And I don't have the exact number, but it is between 15 and 20% open space, and then bounded all sides by arterial streets. The village residential mix in the blue, we're calling all of this village residential mix 8 to 10. We've got approximately 35 acres here, about 313 dwelling units, and we're in excess of 20% open space. And then you'll see a listing down here of townhomes and the percentage 34 that makes up of the product on this site, duplex making up 31% of the product mix, and then multifamily making up another 35. And then all of these dwelling units would be within the 1,980 feet of an arterial intersection, which is what these dimension strings that are overlaid on top of the diagram are meant to represent. And that's just to give you an idea of how they fit into the existing rules. Some open space and streetscape diagrams. Niket is a big proponent of kind of new urbanism as a planning practice, and so much of what's in these village districts and what Hunter is a proponent of also exists in that framework. So parallel park streets and street trees and the pedestrian environment, small blocks to make it permeable and walkable, like all of these things are what we're big fans of. So we're trying to represent that in these diagrams, and so we've shown street trees on the primary circulation around the village residential here, and you'll see open space along the northern border, which is a factor of really kind of a construction setback that's on the property, and then along the western border you'll see we've got about a 45-foot setback that is a multi-use trail and greenway that goes all down the entirety of that. And you'll notice that we're actually turning a bunch of the buildings that run down that side of the property towards that trail so that they front out onto that. And we're trying to amenitize that trail and that green space as much as we can in the planning of it. Here's a little idea about the not necessarily density, but height. I know there's a big sensitivity, and we talked with Hunter about this early on, about this western border and the single-family residential that's our neighbors. So we've tried to step everything down to 1- and 2-story kind of building massings and that kind of scale along that border to be a good neighbor, and then pushed the bigger and taller buildings interior to the site, mostly along Main Street and surrounding kind of our community space to kind of frame this outdoor room, as we would call it. Similar kind of diagram for our community village center. You'll see borders, again, in green space on the east and south side, also kind of a product of the construction setbacks. So we're not really including these spaces in our calculations when we're doing open space. We just know that they exist and will be green and open space. In large part here, we've got a series of pocket parks, the beer garden, the event lawn, some natural area, this pond and this natural area that's kind of in the middle of the site along 181 exists already. I think it is part of it classified as a wetland. It looks like a man-made pond, but I think it's still classified as a wetland. So we're trying to leave all of this as natural as possible, and then using some of the area that's adjacent to it as a wet pond, just to make this an extension of kind of the community space that we're developing on the interior of the site. Again, the same kind of street section here. We're looking at street trees and parallel parking on all of these streets and trying to make this as permeable and pedestrian friendly as we can. Another height diagram for the commercial component. This lines up very similarly. You've got really low scale, kind of 1 and 2 story along the primary street frontages, with the taller and denser buildings pushing into the interior, most of which are 3-story, and you'll see the hotel right here is being proposed as a 4-story element, and the active adult multifamily buildings right here are proposed as 4 stories. This is just the other 2 diagrams kind of combined, so you can see how the street network is covered with shade and trees and make that walkable, and also just the extent of the open space and green space that's on the site. Similar thing with this, just to try and show the height and the mass of the buildings all being pushed to the interior of the site, which was all based on some early feedback and conversations we had with Hunter along the way. And then we get to architectural character, and I think we're trying to take cues from the existing fabric of Fairhope and then spin it forward a little bit and do a modern interpretation of those. So you'll see a lot of what's on here to have some darker tones and color palettes, but they've still got some traditional inspiration in the building forms and the timbering and the porches, the front porches. And so that's, I think, what we're trying to key in on here are some of the color tones and some of the building forms. And we know that front porch and some of this streetscape and how the buildings address the street are also controlled in the village districts. And so we're taking cues from that and how we're setting these up as well. And then just trying to represent all of the different product types that are actually on the plan. We've shown here some row houses or townhomes, and you'll see some of the higher contrast kind of on the upper right and in the center right, but strong kind of traditional building forms and interpretations that are maybe a little more modern or a little more eclectic. And so the active adult and the multifamily buildings, we're showing a variety of skin materials, and on the lower level here, we're showing some, I think, smaller building forms and some of the amenity buildings to give you a range of what we think the aesthetics and the material palette could be on the site. We always have specialty buildings on the site, at least that's how we talk about it, and there's background buildings and specialty buildings, so we want to show you a bit of both so you get an idea that it's not all one thing, that it's going to be a variety of aesthetics and materials. Then we've got a page here on the hotel, obviously one of the bigger buildings on the site, and we've got a variety of kind of not only hotel forms, but some old warehouse kind of adaptive reuse projects and some more modern interpretations here. And this gets into the commercial core, the food and beverage, and you'll see a lot of signage integrated with the architecture, integrated with public art, and we're trying to at least illustrate a funky and kind of eclectic and heavy, like, graphic kind of idea that it'll give it a unique character, I think, for the area, but it's also largely accessible and gives the owners and the tenants and all of the people that are involved in this some ownership along the way. And green spaces, and we've got a lot of them, and so how those are developed and treated, there's going to be obviously big event lawns that will be kind of like the upper right here. And we're going to have smaller pocket parks that look more like the center space where they actually have the cafe lights overhead, and it feels a little more intimate. So try to give you a variety of scales about the spaces that'll be on the site and what they could develop into. A little more on the signage. And this ties back into what we saw in the commercial district slide. Still heavy on the graphics and a modern leaning to all of this, but funky and artistic in nature. And I think that's really the broad overview. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Is that the end of y'all's presentation? I've got a couple comments. First of all, when you said beer garden, you had me at beer garden. No, but in seriousness, a few things that I like, just off the cuff, without getting into numbers or details. The buildings facing Fairhope Avenue, Highway 181 and Gayfer, rather than having the parking facing. That's really nice. The building on the northeast corner, you might look at that because that one's different than the rest of the stands. You've got the parking between it, and that's kind of people coming south. That's the first kind of corner that you see of your project. What is that on the southeast corner? The white, right by the between the commercial space.
You're looking at this one?
Yes.
This was intended to be a convenience store.
Okay.
And the one on the northeast corner was intended to be a drugstore.
I see. But if there's some way you could pull that out, it'd probably be more difficult on the convenience store, but that's just something aesthetically. I like the way that you do the step down on the western corner. The 4-story buildings, what kind of height are you thinking of on those?
I'm not sure what number we could give you
That
on
would be something when
that.
y'all make your regular presentation, it'll be looked at. When something's a large put like this, we a lot of times are a little more lenient on height in the center of it, more concerned on the edges when you're going up to traditional neighborhoods. The concerns that I have that, when it comes to the green space where you've got the different dots, when you come for the regular presentation, like to know kind of the size of those green spaces.
We can do that.
If it's just areas between air conditioned condensers that, people can't recreate in or exercise in, et cetera. Sometimes it's questionable calling that green space. And also the architectural themes, all the pictures we love. Who couldn't, and when we sit up there, and I've been on this board for years and years, and I get all the pictures that come from, Seaside and Grayton Beach and Savannah
Yeah.
and Charleston. And then when the presentation's done, it's just your typical old, not the new Auburn and University of Alabama student housing, but the student housing like when I went there. Kind of the cheapo, siding with the, stairwells up the middle and zero architectural at all. So a big question I would have on this, looking at the kind of density that we're talking about here and so forth, is, on these pictures and the signage and all of this, what kind of guarantees are y'all giving us that, these are the architectural standards that are going to be done, or as soon as this is approved, it's flipped to somebody else that comes in and just does cheap metal buildings? And then finally, the beer garden, would that be like a beer garden that would be shared by different businesses? Or would it be like one large company? Because if it's shared by businesses, you might want to check with the ABC board and see if they would allow overlapping areas. They've got some weird rules.
No, that's good commentary, and I think at least the footprint we're showing for that, the F&B there would lend itself to being multiple concepts. So as a shared space, it would be something we would want to vet out.
Yeah, I might want to vet that with the ABC board just to see what kinds of, abilities, because when you get when anybody gets a liquor license, they have to show a survey of where they'll be selling and to find out whether or not they would allow multiple restaurants to overlap. Is a question I don't know, but you might want to find that out before the presentation.
And with regard to the inspiration imagery we're showing here, the idea was to get some initial feedback to turn it into a pattern book that's eventually a regulating document for the development that would be part of the PUD submittal. So that would give everyone that's involved at least a guidebook on what fits in with the character and the vision and what doesn't.
Be great.
And just to add in there, I mean, that's kind of a key component, those design guidelines for how these are. It's hard to even evaluate this without those. That's what we want to see and be able to start amending some of those things. And with the PUD, it does allow some flexibility that's not in the exact language of our ordinance right now. So, you know, certainly, we've, I think, talked about this for those design guidelines for a few months now. And hard to give that next step of feedback. So I appreciate that here, trying to get some feedback before they move into those stages.
Anybody else have any questions, concerns, or feedback for the future applicants?
I just, a little bit of concern about the green space for the larger residential areas. It doesn't look like, except for those two large pieces that are gonna be, event spaces, basically. I don't see any place for the kids.
Yeah, there would be playgrounds popped into little pocket park areas, but then those two big pond areas that you see will be activated, not just something you look at. You'll be able to enjoy them as park space as well. So it's, the whole design is that you have a combination of places to have free recreation, some structured recreation, even the clubhouse and pool area would be, in the middle of it for even more specialized recreation. So many layers and choices.
And if I may just chime in one more thing, and typically when we look at a PUD, we're not looking at really full engineering plans, but I do think, and I would like to make a request, that at least on the ponds, we kind of get some contours there so we know that's not just a big hole right there and how we are activating those. So at least, and it doesn't have to be, what we're, construction plans, but at least get some concepts.
It's not.
Right.
rolls in or whatever.
And I mean, there's a few here, with buildings right up against buffers. How are we going to address some of those things? That some of the contours would help us understand that a little bit. And not mean that specifically for the two big pond areas, not necessarily the whole site.
Hunter, you could help us. Because this is a lot of buildings on a single lot, and we're lumping a lot of this into either the VRM village or the CBC, what's our best way to communicate setbacks and lot coverage and that kind of thing on this? For deviations or conformance to that base?
I think we probably need to have a conversation on that, because the challenge is, if we're looking at this as neighborhood village districts, when we get the plans, we would review it and see if it meets or not. That's pretty easy for us, but with the PUD, that's, and it kind of aligns with some of the height, I'm certainly, personal opinion, I don't mind the height where it's located. But a lot of times what I want to see is, what are we getting for that extra height? We did a 3-story building on the reserve, but that was to save a lot of other space. So what is the trade-off there? So if we're going 4 stories, then are we going to get 30% in open space instead of the minimum? That's the kind of things I would like to look at or be able to evaluate. I think that's pretty easy by just breaking down those two village districts that you're proposing. What are the standards and what are you proposing? One of the things that's tough here is, in each building type, have a set of design guidelines that we can measure. We can see, we can make comments, feedback on, but sometimes it's just, hey, let's make sure on this building type, we actually need 5 more feet of sidewalk in front of it, or things like that. So those are the design guidelines that I think all of these projects that you mentioned, some are as simple as Seasides that had 1 page of architectural renderings with heights and things like that. I think we all learn from that.
20 years to build it, right?
Yes, that's not exactly the best way to go about it, but there's a lot of other projects like this. Those design guidelines really go into telling what it is and give us the ability to, as this evolves, if it were approved, to guide the whole process without dictating the architectural style, so everything is stagnant and looks exactly the same.
Right, we want to create that diversity. What we typically really work to encourage in these type of conversations, when you're looking at it from a PUD point of view and you're seeing this whole village on a single sheet of paper and you right now see it as one big piece of property, we're focused on content and what goes in it. We've touched on character, but what's pretty much the most important component to the municipality is actually the framework. So if you went to the slide with the trees, it really kind of highlights what I would call the public right-of-ways. That's the space that actually the city is going to take over or own. And through the creation of this, that's the asset you get to propel forward. So we want to create a framework and propose what goes in that framework today, but set it up so you have an asset that over time, it's adaptable, it's flexible in 50 years, and you have something worthwhile. Those green spaces, those parks, those are, this isn't limited to the people who live on this piece of property. It's inviting all the people who live anywhere close to it to come enjoy that open space that we're calling the beer garden, which is really the central civic plaza for events and other things to occur. So this is very much a public project as much as it is a private project, and that's what separates this type of neighborhood planning from the typical parcelized placement of apartment complexes and shopping centers that all stays private. So as we're keeping to develop the conversations and develop the guidelines and even the setbacks, thinking of it from how you need it to be communicated today, but also setting it up so that it can take on the life for the long run and how those setbacks might work for you. And that really comes into play in the size of those right-of-ways, the size of the sidewalks when they're in front of commercial and other spaces, exactly like Hunter was saying.
Just to help me better digest this, I want to make sure I understand what everything is. Can you explain to me the distinction between an active adult multifamily versus a market rate multifamily?
Active adult is typically a 55 plus. It's an age-targeted development. Market rate obviously is who, yeah, it's open to everyone.
And Councilman, we're not going to be checking cards, so when it's 55 plus from a zoning, doesn't matter, it's apartments. If it was independent living, they're in assisted living, that gets into another category. But for our regulations, it's apartments. Apartments are apartments. I will not be chasing people out because they're 54. That's just not what.
With the strong hope that they get to 55.
Right.
Some communities really want to have that kind of limitation for certain percentages of their multifamily, whether it's school system driven or other choices. What we have found as we've started to help developers create these solutions is that there's a lot of people who are renters by choice, especially in those age groups. And we say 55, but we find the average rental age is usually in the upper 60s or low 70s in this type of a place. And so you're living in a place where the amenities are specially catered to that age group. And it's more people that you're getting to visit with and build community with that are in the same situation you're in. So it's as much of giving opportunities for people to have communities within communities.
And it's a great concept, and kind of where that I assume is typically drawn out. It won't necessarily be in the PUD that we police, but within what it is equivalent of the covenants of all the current owners and future owners as they change and evolve. That would be where the restrictions would be on those uses, and let them police that, not the city.
Paul, Harry, y'all have anything to add?
Yep.
I would kind of like to know kind of what the vision is on the perimeter, like on Fairhope Avenue and 181. I mean, it looks like all the great stuff's inside. And like if I'm looking from Fairhope Avenue, it looks like we have some green buffer and that we're looking at the back of a bunch of commercial buildings and then a convenience store here a drugstore over there, and then along 181, I've got some green space, looks like the back of commercial buildings, and like, what's gonna be there that kind of makes you know, oh, this is different, and kind of pulls you in there. And then my second comment on most of the, new urbanism concept and things, there's this hierarchy of streets and circulations and like, all the way from, grand, entrance boulevards to all the way down to, sub-streets to alleyways to pedestrian, corridors. Like, I'm not seeing just graphically kind of like where's y'all's main artery through here, and all the streets kind of look the same, the same width, the same, and like I don't, see like a real, sort of hub or like major crossing of two streets.
We'll be prepared to communicate all that. It does exist, and we can walk through it. You want to talk about the perimeter buildings?
Yeah, we can address at least the perimeter. We originally, when we had this piece of property, had pushed things farther out to the street, and the buildings like you're observing facing out to the street, those would be, they would just have two fronts. I mean, the frontage is still out to Fairhope, and we know that everybody's going to park behind the building and come in that way. So you have to create buildings with two fronts. But we're pulling all of this in response to just site constraints, what we've been told are construction setbacks. So for future possible expansion of those roads, it's a no-build zone. But you'll see those buildings that essentially are double-fronted along Fairhope, the commercial buildings that you see on 181 and the cottages that you see as part of the active adult community that front out to 181 are all facing out to the street. So there is a large green space or setback there that we can't do much about, but we're still trying to front buildings out to the street, so you're not looking at the backs of things. And to address the street hierarchies, most of what you see on this screen, all the tree-lined streets are the primary circulation corridors, and they do get smaller when you're talking about the alleyways that are going to access the garages behind the townhomes or to get into the parking areas. Hard to read at scale when the differences are 4 feet or 5 feet. So we can classify those and give you diagrams that show what the street classifications are. Those would also presumably be part of our regulating document.
And just to give you a tip on that one, we do have a table for those.
Yeah.
If you can use that, I think that's a common language we already know. So that would be a good, I think it's in a chart format, so that would be a great hierarchy. I am a little, kind of one of the things we're really proposing in the comp plan is the connection of this side of town, 181, which is kind of where the new development's happening, and back to town. And I think we all know there's a lot of clarity on where the north-south roads are. We've got two highways, it's the east and west, that are kind of where are those going to grow. 104 is a common area. We don't necessarily know where the southern side, but somewhere between 104 and 98 will probably be a east-west connector in the future. We do not think Fairhope Avenue should be that. It becomes the gateway into downtown. It shouldn't be the highway, if you will. So we're looking at some things connecting 181 back to town, including how we can get different types of bike paths, things like that in town, keeping it kind of a 2-lane. So I'm a little indifferent here. But parallel parking on Fairhope Avenue, while it meets that concept of kind of being this choke point and slowing things down along this corridor, I also know how people drive there right now. So I'm curious about that. Is that kind of meeting minimums? Are we trying to get parallel out there to meet minimums or something?
I think we were trying to create streetscape along the edge of the road there. We're not counting any of that parking in what our counts are that we're showing.
I don't think I even thought of doing that, but that does meet some, Lee, I know you were here, Holly, you might have been, when downtown They were looking at some parking requirements and slowing traffic down, especially Fairhope Avenue. When you come in, I know you were when the portico was built, it was very designed to have those parking spaces right there, and it's the pucker factor when you come into town. It slows people down. It's working as designed. Now, I don't know if we've had many other things that people have called and complained about, because they can't do 60 going through town, but it works as designed, so that could be something that
Well,
was
I
explored
don't,
here.
parallel would be rough there, but maybe
Yeah,
a 45-degree
45,
angle
yeah.
parking, you would get 2.5 times as much parking. And the nice thing about that is it would, lean itself toward your double building entrances, and it would kind of, and then it draws your presentation, kind of brings it into town, like you were talking
Our
about.
first choice is to really slow that traffic down. I love to hear that the primary flow of traffic might be off of this Fairhope Avenue, and this is the more quaint, delightful connection between town. If we can tighten that down and slow it down with the traffic, our first choice were to pull those buildings closer, to have street trees, to have a sidewalk there. So that sense of arrival occurred right on Fairhope Avenue. This big setback with the landscaping is going to, in essence, make it feel a little bit more, suburban in that kind of presentation to Fairhope Avenue. So I don't know if there's any opportunity for the setback along Fairhope Avenue to change to help us create that sense of arrival right there on the edge of that street. Even if it's a nice, big, deep, hardscaping zone, that the edge, the urban edge, so to speak, of hardscaping and sidewalk could actually engage that slowdown in parking.
That's something y'all could talk to staff.
Yeah, I think buildings wouldn't be appropriate, but I think there's definitely some opportunities to, we struggle all the time with development speed control. And that, when you can look at a design this way, we can really do something kind of interesting.
Here, Holly, y'all have anything to?
Yeah, one of the questions I had, if you go to the photos that you have under retail food and beverage, you've got the one that's, I think it's butter and beans. That's interesting because, I was in Florence in October, and then they'll tell you I practically live in downtown Pensacola most of the time on weekends. But that kind of concept, that kind of walkable area, where within are you looking at that within the plan of the buildings? Because I'm seeing buildings clustered around parking lots, and I'm just curious where you see that happening.
So, I don't know if you can see his cursor, but
I can.
the whole block that surrounds the central little beer garden, facing that will be kind of the quaintest frontage.
Okay.
But then all the commercial that starts to move up towards the corner where the convenience store is, and then the frontage along Fairhope Avenue can also be that one-story versions of some of that. So
Sure.
we're tucking some of it underneath on the first floor of the three-story to create vertical mixed use, because people love to live, some people love to live above that type of activity. But we like the one-story for the food and beverage, so you're not having to live above the smells of that. So that's where the mom and pop shops tend to be, underneath the living above, with the food and beverage next to it. A hotel creates a great opportunity for some of that food and beverage to be plugged into it, and have then a group of users that activate it, when a lot of other people might not be there.
To consolidate the consensus, I think the perimeter, making it more engagement and inviting, I like your idea of what you've come up with recently, stating how to draw the people in rather than I just see a big strip of, basically, if you're driving down 98, our big, it's nice buffer, but you're not looking at the side of, Subway and Piggly Wiggly, we have that big buffer, but it's not engaging. We're not using that green space. So how can we, especially what I see that's not been discussed is on the, the west side, what's going to be on this side of the property, and what are we using with that? Everything else is going to be, cars and pedestrians, but this is going to back up to a neighborhood.
Yeah, there is some significant landscaping along a lot of that border. So the idea is to try and save all the mature landscaping that rides down that border and kind of let this multi-use trail weave in and out of it, but leave it as natural as we can. So the fact that we're facing some buildings onto that, we thought it's just like having a public green kind of in front of your house, that's what you're looking out to.
And then you can see the parallel park street that comes down and touches that greenway close to where the main town center activity is. The whole idea is that if you took the greenway in front of the nice townhouses or cottages, you would basically arrive to this area where the infrastructure of the street engages that trail, and it tells you that's where I get off the trail and go down the street to the town center area right there next to it.
The other thing that I see, and I know it's just because it's hard for us to envision, is, you know, I just want to make sure the parking lots are tucked away and conveniently hidden, where we're not just looking at big open parking lots in a village. And I really think you could get real creative with your convenience store as well as your CVS or Walgreens pharmacy by just flipping it with the parking in the rear, so that, again, it's more engaging from the outside rather than a parking lot.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
And if you did do 45-degree angle parking on Fairhope Avenue, you might want to make some sketches, you know. Hunter doesn't like the idea off the cuff of pulling those buildings forward, but if you did some, you know, kind of sketches showing what it might look like, you know, I mean, it might make sense possibly on those, depending on what would then happen on that green space. And the last thing was, looked like, you know, downtown Fairhope Avenue, kind of what we did over there by Chris Haley's. where we were
That's
trying
what I was referring to.
do the
with
45 and pull those forward more, right, you know, but just, I mean, you know, don't spend a lot of time on it, but you could throw in some sketches and just see,
Absolutely.
you know, kind of what it looks
What
like.
is regulating
So that's not only is
Unless
that a
it's a hard
setback,
no.
there's in the tree ordinance on Fairhope Avenue, there is a required 20-foot landscape buffer. You can have parking in it, but not a building. So that is, there's no variance process for that.
Yeah, never mind that. Tree ordinance is a tough one.
And I do think, and this is something it would be pretty easy, I think, to accomplish, but something, when you're talking about the internal parking lots, that I think it gets lost a little bit, a simple line drawing, where are the pedestrian kind of circulations, you know, kind of color coded on what type, and how they would preferate the buildings, you know, from getting from the interior parking lot to the kind of,
where do you pop through?
yeah, where do you pop through? How do you do that? You know, that certainly will get fleshed out as the buildings are
Yes.
designed, but I think it's important at this point to know kind of in general where those are gonna be
And there will be certain
located.
parking lots that are intended to be the public parking for the retail and food and beverage, and those are the ones we really focus on that connection the most.
That starts to tell the story and questions I have when I look at it, and they're kind of missing, so I think that would be helpful. And we can look at it. We do, I know we haven't discussed this because there's a lot going on, but at least personally, I think 181 is something there's not a pedestrian, you know, connection shown on that 181 side, but, you know, I do think that's important.
How are the people in the development going to get to that
All day.
pharmacy?
Yeah, we would definitely have pedestrian pathways along Gayfer. That's intended, much like we're showing on Fairhope Avenue, so it's just a miss on our part not to have it represented here. 181, I think we were probably shying away from just the volume of traffic that's out there as much as anything, because we didn't see anywhere that it was connecting to.
And we are, I mean, I think that's every development that's been going on. If y'all can remember, even, we've got Harvest Green next month, that has pedestrian connectivity. Rockwell, Planters Point, the Encounter, I think they did it best with what we were looking for. From a purely, and they had the benefit of following after all the others, but yeah, I believe it's a 12-foot multi-use, even low-speed vehicles, but golf carts can use that, and that is the goal, to have that connectivity along 181. Unlike back in the 50s, AlDOT's probably not going to want us to put sidewalks in the state right of way, so like we have on 98. So we are wanting those along that, so we make sure that connectivity is there for the future.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
I
Nothing
love the
else?
signage. I think that's great. I think that's a great use of space.
and I know we're not there, but I would love it if you guys did a master sign plan for this development.
We usually, that's part of our, we have special guidelines typically for that. We can even provide review services, but obviously these are levels of service we have to continue to talk to.
Well, and just what gets missed a lot is signage. On a new development, if it's not in the PUD and the PUD allows us to have a new sign package just for this development.
Yep.
But if it goes out and we have to look at our current sign ordinance, it's not gonna really line
Manage
up
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Happy to.
All right. Thank y'all very much. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank all of you for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, anything else for the good of the order? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Welcome, glad to have